Right. So we are streaming on Facebook, I think. It's difficult to tell because it's all kind of hidden behind there. So people on Facebook, I'm sorry about the microphone, but it's not LinkedIn, so you're going through the laptop. But welcome everyone. I'm just going to talk quickly about the sponsors. So we do have kind of national sponsors that help us with our WordPress Sydney meetups. They also help with the WordCamps as well, which might be coming soonish. Let's stay tuned. But we do have these major sponsors. So we've got Kinetics, we've got WPSyd, we've got Plesk, and we've got the WordPress Foundation, obviously, and Microsoft as well to provide this venue. So all these guys help us. You know, they help us to buy the pizza, they help us to put on this this event for free, the venue for free as well. But they also put money behind all the meetups as well. So it's not just this one; it's like all meetups in Australia. So really, go and have a look at their websites, have a look at what they've got to offer as well. They're not just services; they are community leading companies. So yeah, we really thank them very much for their contribution. Thank you. Okay, we've kind of done this, so we'll skip that. We've seen who's here. Hopefully, you've had a good natter over some pizza. Did you hear about this in the news? Some of you might not have heard about this, but Matt Mullenweg, if you don't know who he is, he basically owns Automatic. He's like the head guy that's looking after WordPress.com and the kind of open source project that it is. So he's kind of the boss. He had a bit of a Twitter rant the other day, and he basically replied to a person who was talking about community and involvement. And this is a summary of all the tweets, which have since been deleted. But he basically said that GoDaddy was a parasitic company and there was an existential threat to WordPress. And what he meant by that, or what we can guess what he meant by that, is that he's basically saying the amount of money that GoDaddy is making from WordPress is not equal to the amount of effort they're putting back into the open source project. Matt's got this idea to put like 5% of a company's effort back into the open source project. Now, if you're new to WordPress, WordPress itself, the actual app, is an open source app, which means it's out there, you can view the code, everyone just contributes to it, it's not kind of sold or anything, it's freely available. Now, Matt Mullenweg and Automatic, they make their money from a service called WordPress.com, which hosts site using the open source. So they're kind of separate but linked together. And what he's saying is that if companies like GoDaddy, just keep reaping in the benefits and not putting back into the project, then the project could be under some pressure to kind of go away. You know, if you don't put the stuff in, you don't put all the good love in, and you're just reaping out all the wars, at some point it's going to come crashing down. So that's kind of what the whole rant was about. It's quite interesting. There's a couple of links there, and I'll put all the links on the meetup page afterwards so you can have a look at this stuff. But there was also, it kind of ended, Matt Mullenweg said he shouldn't be replying to anything else because he's got a fever. So, but whether or not that was the cause, I don't know, but it caused a bit of a storm on the internet with WordPress. And GoDaddy, if you do contribute a lot to the community, they're very, very, very good in the reply in what they said. They basically replied to say that we're all trying to do the same thing. So they're very gracious in the reply. So leave it at that, and you can have a look later. But that was what kind of the big news the past month. Okay, so you're all here to find out how to make WordPress go faster. Unfortunately, there's no big go faster button, which we'd all like to hit. So let's have a look. Okay, so why is speed important? You'll kind of know this, but I've got to start somewhere. All right. So basically, Google says that you should look for a loading page speed of 2 seconds or less for that. Okay. And lots of other studies have been done, and I've got all the references. I've put all these references in the meetup page. And if you have a loading page that's more than 2 seconds, then anything over 2 seconds, you're going to get a 47% bounce rate from that. So you're losing half your traffic if your page, on average, is loading for more than 2 seconds, which is absolutely huge. Now, we know all the benefits for fast web pages anyway. You get good SEO. You're getting good page results for those, you're getting good user experience, you're getting your conversion rates, you're dropping your bounce rates, and all that kind of goes back into SEO and your page rankings and stuff. So
who are those people who can wait for more than 2 seconds?
Everyone.
No, I'm not doing that.
No.
I will wait 5 or 10 sometimes.
Yeah, you can have a read. I think it's it could have been Kinsta as one of the sources, but it's marketing firms that have done this research, finding that people's attention span is lowering year after year after year. In fact, it's worse than a goldfish at the moment. The goldfish has got like a almost 4 second attention span, and people have like a 2 second attention span.
Well, do you know if there's any sort of generational skew to that? Because I can imagine that, you know, if you're young, you've grown up with fast technology, right? Not my case, right? I grew up with slow technology.
Yeah, I think there would be. It'll be in the data. You can read the report. I didn't say things. I kind of skimmed through it to get the metrics. But yeah, I presume there is some sort of generational skew to that. Young people are looking for stuff now. Whereas older people are probably more akin to kind of wait a little bit, you know, and experience as well. Maybe not just generational, but maybe experience as well. So yeah, speed obviously is important. That's why we're all here. Okay, so that leads us to how do you actually measure your website. So it's all good talking about speed is good, but you need some metrics so you can actually measure something against something. So I like using GT metrics. Now, there's lots of other measuring tools out there. There's Kingdom tools. There's Google itself. They have page measuring speeds. But I like GT metrics for 2 reasons. One is they have their own GT metrics grade, which has been proved to be actually quite good and quite close to Google anyway. Google kind of said that. But they also show this Google Web Vitals. Now, if you don't know what the Google Core Web Vitals are, they were launched last year, maybe the year before, for that. And it's a set of metrics that not only determine how fast your website is, but also how people interact with your web page. Okay, so it's kind of a measurement of speed and usability together. So yeah, you can have like a fast website, but you know, if it's not usable at a certain time, then that's going to score against you. And these core web vitals, they actually reflect back into the Google core algorithm for all the page ranks and SEO. So it's probably a good idea to pay a little bit of attention to them, but don't spend all your time trying to get 100% on everything. That's just wasting your time. As long as they're in the green, then according to Google, your site's pretty fast, it's pretty useful. The other good thing I like from GT metrics is this, the speed visualization. And what it shows you, it's looking at the Google Core Web values and it's showing you when it's hitting those metrics. And I won't go into that because I've covered the Google Core Web Vitals on separate talks. So you can have a look at those in the WordPress meetup in their YouTube page. But you can see here, time to first byte, TTFB. So that's when your browser is asking the server for some data and your server first response. So time to first byte. And then it shows the speed visual, it shows the layout. So first contentful paint, that's a Google metric. That's when the first bit of data starts to hit the browser, that's rendering that HTML page. Then you've got the on load time, is basically when all the assets have been loaded in and it's displaying most of the stuff in the browser. But then this other metric, this is part of the Google Core Vital. So you've got on load time, which is when the user can start to see above the fold. But then you've got this time to be interactive, and that's when somebody can actually start using the site, start scrolling through and start clicking on buttons. But it's not the full load time. So fully load time, this is for one of my websites, is 4.1 seconds. So it's over the 2 second rule, but people can start interacting with it after 1.4 seconds. And that's what counts. As long as people can actually start interacting, pressing buttons, start filling out forms. Google doesn't mind so much if you're loading stuff. It's not as important down the fold into it. So don't just look at the overall time. And this is why these Google Core Web Vitals are quite important. It's the time to be able to interact that Google's kind of measuring. And that's part of this usability, user experience for those. So that's why I quite like. You've got this visualization of what's happening. So you can kind of see at what point your site is usable and loaded. And then as well as that, you've got these top issues for those. And this is GT Metrics recommendations of what things to focus on first. So that might be 10, it might be half a dozen things. But if you address those issues first, you're going to get a greater response and speed than if you're focusing on something you think might be better, like tinkering down the road. So for example, this one here, and they're talking about cache policies. It's going to save you 300 kilobytes. So these things here, and knock off those, you're going to get the biggest benefit of those. So you can run this through other tools, Pingdom tools, but I think GT Metrics for me, I think gives you the most amount of data for that. Now, they do have a free service, so you don't have to sign in, but it limits it to the number of times you can measure, sites you can measure, and it also measures you only from, I think, United States or Vancouver, Canada, I think it is. So if you want to do it for Sydney, and you're probably best doing it for Australian audience, then create a free account, log in, and then you are still limited, but you can do about 10 or 12 of these a day. So that's measuring your website speed. Okay. Right. So there's 3 things I want you to do when you start measuring your website speed. I want you to do 3 different tests. The first one I want you to do is WordPress core. What I mean by that is disable all your plugins, disable your current theme. So you've only got WordPress core, and maybe use 2022 or 2021 or 2020 theme. So that's the default theme that comes with WordPress. Okay? Put it down to WordPress core and one of the 2020 themes and run that test again. What this is going to show you, that's like a baseline. This is as fast as WordPress is going to run on that server. Okay, you can't make it run any faster because it's got nothing else that's loading in. It's just WordPress, it's just the base theme. And what this is going to tell you is your hosting account. Okay? There's nothing you can do, well, there's a little optimizing in WordPress you can do, but there's nothing much you can do to make WordPress run any faster. So don't go loading in the whole page first, start with this. And then that will tell you what issues there are. And if there's things like your time to first byte, if the server's responding back in 2 seconds, your web host has got a major problem. So rather than start to do work on your images or anything else, go to the very, very common denominator WordPress and your theme first and test it there. Save your effort. You had a question?
So yeah, so you would obviously you've got your 2 themes loaded, and you would activate your 2020 theme, run it. Is that going to screw up your site, and then you go back to your other one? Is it going to alter anything in your site? Probably if you're in Divi and then you're doing that. Yeah. So would you do it on staging?
Yeah, no, so I mean the question is it going to affect your website if you switch over to the 2022 theme? It's going to make it look a bit strange for a while.
Yeah, I mean when you go back,
you can go back, no, it's
you
fine.
shouldn't have made any changes to your website.
No. This is just for metrics only. So WordPress stores all your theme related stuff, so your theme, your Divi, your page builder stuff. It stores that with the theme. So when you activate something else, it puts up a clean number of settings. You've still got your content in there. It can look a bit funny, but essentially it's just WordPress in that theme. And if you go back over to Divi, back over to your theme, all your settings will all come back in. Okay, so test the WordPress core first, set a baseline, and optimize WordPress a little bit, but essentially that's telling you more about your web host environment than it is about WordPress. So time to first byte, server responses, things like that. And there you can save yourself a whole heap of time rather than trying to optimize everything switched on together.
If you did try it on the staging site, would it still show you an accurate speed?
If you had your staging site set up exactly as your production, then yes, it would. But 9 out of 10 times, staging sites are a little bit different for that. So it might have debugging switched on the staging site, and that's going to add to the time. So try and find a time where your website isn't as active. Put it down for a couple of minutes, do the test, switch it back over, and you'll get a true reading for that website. The second test is I want you to enable your theme and WordPress core, but no plugins. So it's kind of roughly the same test, but for example, if you're using Elementor, you want to use your Elementor theme, whatever you're using, Astra or Hello, enable Elementor Pro and Elementor Free. Same with Beaver Builder if you're doing that. Divi, I think there's just the one plugin for Divi. So have that and have your theme, and then do the test again. Okay, and that's going to give you a second baseline. This is going to show you what impact your theme has. So take your first baseline with WordPress core, second baseline with your bare bones theme and your page builder, what you've got within, and that'll show you the gap difference. And then you can start optimizing just the theme and the plugin, for example, Divi or Elementor, optimize that for page speed. Okay. The third test is everything. So that's all your plugins added, everything in there. And within these 3 baseline scores, you can see the difference in how the speed reacts to that. So you might get a negligible difference between once you've got your theme enabled and what you had with core, and that's great. That means that your theme is really sleek and it's optimized. If you're loading in Elementor, Elementor Pro, Elementor Active with a Hello theme, you're probably going to see quite a few increase in speed. And that means that you've got an opportunity to tweak some of those settings within the plugin. You might want to minify stuff or whatever, and within the actual settings themselves of the plugins and the theme to try and minimize that. And then once you have everything activated, that's your end measurement. So you will see the page difference for all the plugins that have now been activated. So it gives you 3 different ways to measure your website, rather than go all in at first and then not really knowing where it is, and then unfortunately find out that maybe it's your web host that's the problem. This gives you like a step to go through grading your website. Okay, so why is WordPress so slow? Okay, so essentially, generically, WordPress is made up of 2 parts. Okay, so you've got your backend, which is your web server, and all the configurations that has, your RAM, your CPU, your PHP threads, even your WordPress dashboard, the backend settings you've got connecting to your database, all that sort of stuff. And then you've got your front end, which is what the public see. And that also includes, when you're logging in, you can see like the content, you're in charge of the content, the images, and all that sort of stuff. So some of the reasons that it could be slow for those, your front end is plugins and themes and all the stuff it does. Back end is slow server, not enough RAM, CPU ticks, and that sort of stuff. So in general, when you're looking at why WordPress is slow, you're looking at kind of both these 2 big general boxes and trying to figure out, what's causing the slowness. Okay, so let's have a look at some tips to make WordPress go a little bit faster, looking in context with those kind of 2 general areas, back end and front end. Okay, so back end performances. I love that picture. The first biggest impact you can probably do with your WordPress website is to choose a high performance web host. Now, it's not in everyone's affordability to go straight to WP Engine or Pagely or Kinsta, but it can make the biggest difference. And this has probably come out of that very first test when you got the WordPress core and the 2020 theme. If you're getting a long time to first byte, if your browser is saying, hey there, give me the website, and then it's listening, and the host is very slow to respond, there's nothing you can do programmatically, there's nothing you can do settings-wise with WordPress to increase that. That's purely a web hosting thing. So you've got a choice. You can either stick with them and just have a long time to first byte, or you can jump to a more high-performant web host. So there's different gradings in these. Also, we talked about GoDaddy at the very beginning. GoDaddy's got a bit of a reputation for cheap hosting and not so good support, not so good performance-wise. So you've got kind of that scale, which is shared hosting, maybe $2 or $3 a month. You've probably got mid-range hosting, and we're maybe talking about SiteGround here. Still a shared service, but some of their services are managed, and some of them can be siloed off if you pay a little bit extra. So you're maybe talking about $20, $30 a month for those. And then you can go high-end. So you can go with the WordPress big hosts, you can go with WP Engine, you can go with Kinsta, you can go with Flywheel, you can go with Kinetics, which is Australian, you can go with Wordify, which is Australian, that's one that I use for those. And those are high-performance managed web hosts, and that WordPress is all we do. So that's what their infrastructure is just catered for. Whereas the other ones like GoDaddy and even SiteGround to a certain extent can host other things other than just WordPress. So we're not finely tuned to WordPress. So you've got a choice. Okay, that's your first choice. If you find your time to first byte really poor, the first choice is you can choose another web host, and that is your choice. If you are choosing a web host, you probably want to make sure that your your website is located in a data center that's closest to your target audience. So I'm presuming everyone's target audience here is probably Australia, because that's why you're here. No, got shaking head. But what you want to make sure is that your website is located where your biggest audience is. Now, most of these sites, when you're moving away from the low scale shared hosting up to the kind of mid and top end hosting companies, they're probably going to give you a choice of location when you set up a web hosting. because they got data centers in like the big capital cities. So just make sure that you choose something that's closest to your target audience. So here in Australia, in Sydney, or maybe it's in the UK and London, for example. Just, it just gives that little bit of edge. So rather than data traveling, from Brazil all the way to Sydney, now you've got Sydney to Sydney. If Sydney and Australia your biggest target audience, it makes that little bit of difference. Those 2 extra milliseconds. So quite important to choose that. Okay, this is something you might not have heard about. It's called premium DNS. And again, we're still in the kind of back-end area that we're looking at, servers and telecommunications and networking, that sort of stuff. I put little things in the titles just to remind me what to talk about, by the way. So in 2016, there's a company called Dyn. And Dyn is a DNS company, and they serve DNS routing, so mapping an IP address up to web names for some of the largest companies in the planet. The Verizon, CNN, BBC, Apple, PayPal, Amazon, sorry, not Apple, but definitely the other ones. In 2016, some bad actor decided to do a DDoS, so it's a distributed denial of service. So they get all these like millions of computers, they take them over, and they basically send requests. And they sent requests to the core DNS servers. There's only about 12 of them. There's lots of instances. There's only like 12 core computers that look after the internet, basically thousands of instances. But they targeted all these instances, and it basically brought down the DNS network. So companies like PayPal, Amazon, they were down for a day, couple of days, just because somebody targeted this one company. And so the whole DNS failed. So long story short, a few of the companies decided, not going to have this again. What we're going to do is we're going to create a secondary DNS resolution system, and we're going to put it on our infrastructure, and it's going to be super fast. And if that one fails, then our will kick over. And they did that. A few companies did that. And in fact, it was so good, it became their primary DNS. And if that fails, then they'll go back to the normal DNS. So this is actually an option on probably more of your medium to high-end web hosts. You can actually purchase a premium DNS server. And what's that going to do? It's going to make it faster. So that very first part of the visualization from GT metrics, you've got the TTFB, time to first byte. That is significantly reduced because of all this networking. It's on a premium network now. So it's a lot faster than doing DNS resolution. So again, that's another thing in your toolkit. You can maybe shave a few milliseconds off that, and it makes a world of difference to Google because your page is loading faster. Okay, so let's talk about another thing that's in your control. We're still looking at the back end. This is called Content Delivery Network, or CDN for short. And the whole idea here is a company has servers located in different places around about the world. And what they do is they take a little bit of a cache of some of the more popular pages on your website, your homepage, your about page, your contact page. So if your server is located in Australia, but someone is browsing in South America, then they'll catch the South American part of that cache first, and they'll draw it quicker. And it just means they're getting faster results. And fast results means good SEO page runs. Now, there's a few popular CDNs. The big one you probably heard of is Cloudflare. That's probably the number one CDN for popularity. But there's others. There's Max CDN. There's one that's called Bunny.net as well. And they'll do roughly the same thing. Now, I don't know about Max CDN. I'm not too sure about Bunny.net. But definitely with Cloudflare, if you're running your system through Cloudflare, Cloudflare also has a premium DNS. And whether it's free or paid, you actually run your system on their premium DNS. So if you switch your site over to cache through Cloudflare, not only are you getting benefit from a CDN, you also get a benefit of their premium DNS. So you've got a double whammy. Boom, boom. Yeah, and it's going to significantly increase your loading speeds for your web pages.
International.
Internationally, yeah.
Like when we speak about Australia, it's like pointless to use CDN services, yeah?
No, not at all. I don't think, because you still get that speed increase. Even if your audience is here.
We tested this. Like, so e-commerce, absolutely not, because you have product you need to update it all the time. So you can cache only pages which are static pages.
That's right.
But yeah, we tested with Cloudflare, switch on, switch off,
yeah,
in one country, much faster.
Yeah. I get some.
But internationally, absolutely yes, because yeah, you need to search something outside and it speeds up.
Yeah.
It's, but not always, you need to test it also.
Always test, always test. All this stuff is like generic stuff. It might change for your particular instance. But yeah, for CDN, you make a good point. There's some things that you don't want cached. Things like checkouts, things like accounts, things like my cart. You can't cache that because it's dynamic stuff. But in general, what a CDN is doing, it's reading a cached flat files and just spitting out to the server. So it's always going to be faster, even in your case, maybe not, but in most cases, even for me in Australia, it's faster because my about page, my contact page, it's already been cached. It just spits out rather than tell WordPress to compile PHP and get it all.
Because Cloudflare have servers here in Perth, you know what Perth is like maybe 4,000 Ks almost, yeah, 3,000.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, so that's why it's faster.
Yeah, and you get the premium DNS, which is good. So yeah, that's a consideration, something to think about. I run my websites through Cloudflare, and it does give a significant difference. One of the last things you can do at the back end is database optimization. Now, it's not for everyone. It's maybe not the most luxurious thing to do. We've got a database person here, an ex-database person here. Maybe that says more. But it's certainly something within your remit from the back end you can have a look at and change. Okay, so one of the biggest tools, one of the best tools for doing this with WordPress is PHP My Admin. And that tool is usually bundled within your cPanel or Place account. For those, if it's not, then you can install it as a plugin and run it within your WordPress website. It's a bit slower, but it gets the job done. That's not the sexiest interface in the world. It's a little bit old school, maybe 10 years back to date, but it works. So don't be concerned with all the loads of different options for those. And there's heaps of tutorials online that shows you exactly what to do when optimizing things. So one thing you can do is change your database table engine. So in the database, you have lots of tables that store lots of things like WordPress users, post information, comment information, all that sort of stuff. Generally, each table in itself runs what they call a particular database table engine. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of the engine, but it's a different way for the database server to store and translate and look up stuff within that table. Ideally, you probably want to have them all in the same database engine, especially if you're doing cross queries. Okay, so if WordPress is looking at the post data, but it's also having a look at another table that's got post metadata, that's data associated with that, then if it's something to swap between different engines, then it's going to be taking extra time. Milliseconds, but it's extra time. So I would recommend that you have all of these in the same engine. Now you can see here, there's a couple that's in an old engine called MyISAP. So InnoDB is probably one that most people run, but an older one is MyISAP. Now this can happen if you change web hosts. It can maybe happen if you've got an old plugin that creates a table itself. It can create in a different engine, but you can change this within PHP My Admin. And there's a couple of tools and tutorials down there that will show you how to convert all those to the same database engine. So that's a quick thing that you can do. The next big thing you can do with databases is to delete transients. Now, transients are a little bit of stored cache that WordPress developers use. So if they work out a problem, if they look up some stuff, they might throw it in the database and cache it. So next time they don't have to do the problem again, you just get the results. Spit it out. WordPress should delete them automatically, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes that's because the WordPress cron doesn't work. It doesn't fire up the job to clean those transits. But for whatever reason, transits can build up, especially in things like WooCommerce and membership sites. And the more stuff you have in the database, the longer it has to take to read through all the stuff. So if you get rid of the stuff you shouldn't have, then the whole idea is you're going to get a faster database response. Now, a good little plugin called Transients Manager there. And that basically shows all the transients in the database. You can go and select the ones that have expired. So that's the ones that should have already been deleted, but for whatever reason WordPress hasn't. So they're taking up room in the database, just stack them all. You don't need them. The good thing with transients is if you delete it from the database, and if WordPress needs it, it just goes and creates it again. So yeah, there's no loss for that. I think the last thing you do with database is revisions. Now, by default, WordPress stores everything. It stores a copy of everything. Okay, unlimited revisions. So if you're in a post, you edit it and you save it, edit it again, save it, edit it again, change it, and save it. It's keeping that store in the database all the time. And that's if you've got a little active website, then that can make like thousands, tens of thousands of revisions over a couple of years. And again, it's in the database, it's making the database bigger, it's making lookups longer, so you can get rid of those. So this little plugin here, WPSyd, install that in, have a look, it shows you all the different revisions for different types. So you've got post revisions, you've got comment revisions, you've got lots of different types of revisions. So you can just delete all those. And that's your database nice and clean and up to date. But the next thing you want to do is you definitely want to tell WordPress what to do with revisions. Because if you go and clean them up, it's just going to create more. So there's a file called wp-config.php, and that's your WordPress configuration file. It's got all the secret GUIs in there, so you don't want to play around with it too much. But you can add this one line in. Okay, define wp_post revisions, and then 3. 3 is telling WordPress I only want to save 3 copies of that particular post. Or you can put it down to false, which means don't save anything, which means you've got 1 copy, and if you screw it up, you're stuffed. So it's up to you. It's up to you to decide where that kind of sweet spot is. I've got mine set 3 or 2 just in case. Okay, so that's all the back end stuff. Any questions on that? I've got a few questions throughout. Everyone okay? Everyone happy? Move on to good stuff. No
I
question?
was a bit lost in the CDN.
The CDN.
Yeah,
Okay.
can you explain it again?
Sure.
I mean, it's a sort of plugin that you use to check the content delivery, or?
Yes, it can be a plugin, or it can be at the host level as well. So
okay.
sometimes when you log into cPanel or Plesk, there's a little Cloudflare button, and you click on it, and it can do things. It does like magic things in the background. It tells your website to redirect stuff through to Cloudflare.
Okay.
And you can also, it's also got to do with your DNS
Yeah.
as well. So a DNS is looking up your IP address, 168.0.0, whatever, and that translates it to willbrown.com, for example. That's what DNS, domain name system. So it translates the human names you can type in to the beep, 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 it's in your computer.
Yeah.
And that bounces around all the different servers in order to get all the stuff out. Cloudflare, that helps that system by using that premium, it makes it faster. So that's one part of Cloudflare. The second part is the caching. And so if you've got, let's go back to this one here. So if we're in Australia and we're running our WordPress website in Australia, and we're getting somebody from Africa looking at our website. Okay. If we don't have this in place, then what they're doing is their browser is going all the way to Australia, and it's asking, send me some data. Okay, and then WordPress churns around your contact page. And so WordPress is an application built with many layers. So WordPress says, okay, right, go into the database, give me the header for the WordPress database. Okay, give me the footer for what's the content in there. Okay, I've got the header and I've got the footer. Right, what's the page in between? Right, I've got a graphic here, loads of graphic. I've got the title, get that from the database. Okay, what's the content within your page? Okay, back to database, get the content out. I've got a form in there. It's going to the database, fill out the form, renders all that into a format that the browser would like, and then spits out. Okay, and then the data travels back to there. Okay. What a CDN does, it takes all that stuff that WordPress does into building the web page, and it stores it as a static file, an HTML file, and then it stores it somewhere near here. So next time when someone is looking in Africa is looking at your contact page, rather than go all the way to here, wait for WordPress to do its thing and send it back, it just needs to find the file and it sends it back.
So it's gonna be quicker for them.
Super quicker, super quicker. And then that's planet-wide. So if you've got like distributed audience, if you find Google Analytics, you can quickly pull from the States, looking over, then this is where it starts to affect your rankings, not just in your home country, but elsewhere as well. Because one of my second target audiences is the US. My website gets a lot of visits from the US. Now, I do most of my SEO for Australia, of course, that's where my target audience is. But every so often I have a look at google.com, because there's a big audience there. So if I can rank higher in there, then I'm getting more views, more goodies for me. So CDN will help you balance your SEO scores planet-wide. Is that clear picture?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks.
What's a typical GT score for a website?
There's no typical.
Yours showed a really high, 99%?
Yeah.
5.9.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Are most websites above 80%?
Well,
No.
I'm using the free cloud access and I'm getting 89%.
Okay. Yeah, I just checked mine. It's not. very
It
good.
actually fully depends on what you've got on your website. Yeah, you could have WordPress core, you could be running 2022, and you could be the sort of user that takes, you could be a photo blogger. And you're out having a coffee and you're taking a picture of your lovely latte and you're loading it up at 5,000 by 5,000 resolution. And then somebody's looking at that page and it's going, oh, you can have somebody with a WooCommerce website that's got 20,000 products, but they're actively on CDN, and they've got their DNS premium, they've everything optimized, 2 seconds like that. It depends on how your website is set up. So there's no average score, but it's a traffic light system in here. So green is good, amber is all right, red is we need some serious attention.
And then you'd follow. Sorry, and then you'd follow your steps.
Yeah, follow these steps first.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then have a look at all these different things and see which ones make the best.
When you touch these metrics, that's beautiful. You mentioned, like from SEO perspective, important is to know that it's laboratory test. And it's not the same what your website do on specific device. So they, like, imagine laboratory, you're testing something in laboratory. So they take in page, clear page, everything, and it's not the natural environment. It is also good if you have Google Analytics. Sorry,
No,
go to Google Analytics. If you have enough traffic on the website, in Google Analytics you have section, then you can look up the speed, real speed from users. So because users that they have different devices and phones, and so on, so on. Second place you can check it is go to the website, click Inspect Tools. On Inspect Tools, go to the Lighthouse tab, and there is a space.
Yeah, there's lots of
Google pulls the data, and you can run the test, but also pull the data, real data, which are collected for this website.
Yeah, so if you want to
Why is different? Because, for example,
if you want to do an advanced test, then you like both. But these are skills that people can just
like
take
basic,
from home.
you need to do to know what's happening on the website. And actually, it's next step is use the waterfall and see how each element performs. What blocks. What I find on the most of the website, what blocks the website?
Yeah.
Google Maps, Google Fonts, Facebook interface, and so on. Like,
it's going to be different in everyone's different context. But we'll get to some more advanced stuff at the end.
But there's if you on that one there, avoid excessive DOM size.
Yeah.
That's not actually a back-end metric. That's going to be different on a mobile device compared to a desktop device.
It is,
and
and all these are general, but it's a good place to start for those. You can get as specific as you want, and I really would do that in your cases. But these are kind of very general. These are like the things that can get you the biggest oomph. So if you're down in grade F, if you're doing these things here, you can get yourself up to grade B. If you want to spend 40 hours a week trying to get from 96 to 99%, that's up to you. But these fixes are going to cover 80% of how to get your website up and running. Okay. Right. Okay, front end performance. Up on that, Okay, so the front end performance we're talking about now, log into WordPress. This is the stuff that's in your control, you're in your dashboard, and this is the stuff that the visitors are going to see, the public facing stuff. So first thing I recommend is to go and visit your site health. So that's a WordPress tool, that's under tools and site health. That's going to give you a rough overview if there's any issues that's happening within your WordPress website. Okay. Now, it might not be completely linked to speed, but if there's issues in your website, that can have an effect. Okay, so it could say things like your cron job is not working, which could affect leading transits and stuff. So it's kind of a secondary thing, but definitely have a look there. If there's any critical issues, and probably best to fix them up first, just so that you've got a good working website in order. Okay, so the next big thing that you can do, apart from changing web host, apart from running CDN in the back end, the thing that you can actually do as a content creator, as a website manager, is to optimize your images. You're going to get the biggest hit from doing that. And I've done hundreds of website audits, and the first thing I look at is the size of images, and they're always massive. Like on the blog page, we've got lists of blog, like the little tiny thumbnail is 150 by 150, will be like a 5,000 resolution image that's squashed down. So it's definitely one of the biggest things you can do to really increase your page speeds. The first thing you should have a look at is your theme. So have a look at your theme. What image sizes is your theme using? And you can usually get this from the documentation. If you don't know where it is, you can always ask the theme developer, but it should be well documented that the featured image is this size, so it might be 1280 by 720. For example, it might be 100 by 600, that sort of stuff. If you have a look at the thumbnails, the sizes that it uses, then that you know now how to prepare your images for uploading. So you're not uploading your 2,000 images, 2,000 by 2,000 images, your 5,000 by 5,000 images for all cases. Okay, so first start with your theme and make sure you're only using the image sizes that it's supporting. Otherwise, it's going to scale it down and you're loading kind of more stuff than you actually need to.
It's also a common error is to upload them in PNG 16-bit, and no websites can display that. That was a big fault of mine to figure it out.
We'll get to that. Yeah. Okay, so if you are supporting Retina devices, then Retina is usually your ×2, so they've got high definition. If you want to support those natively, then this is a really good plugin to use. I think it's called Pixel Perfect or something like those. There's a handful of Retina plugins, but I think this one is the best in that amount of options it has. So yes, check how big your maximum size of image for your theme is, but also think about, if you want to support Retina devices natively. What this plugin allows you to do is upload a separate ×2 size image, and that is only displayed on the Retina high def devices. And it does it in such a way whereas WordPress is actually only delivering that particular image out to those devices. It's a HTML CSS thing called source set. So it knows which device you're looking at, what resolution, that will deliver the appropriate size image for those. So if you want to display Retina stuff, I suggest using a plugin for that, rather than load up a huge image for everything and then let WordPress scale it down. The next thing to have a look at is media optimization. So this is in your media settings, so settings media for WordPress. Now, your theme might use different thumbnail sizes, yeah, and if it does, that's good. But if you don't need these are the thumbnails that WordPress automatically creates when you load up any image file. So if you load up an image file, that's what it's called original size. But WordPress will make a copy 150, 300 by 300, and 1024 by 1024. And your themes might use this. It might use some for the blog, thumbnail stuff. But if it doesn't, then a tip is you can put 0 in all of these fields, the ones you don't need, and then WordPress won't generate those files. Okay, a lot of people don't realize that and just leave that setting, and then after 3 years, you've got like thousands of files there. So if you don't need those, don't let WordPress generate them. It's as easy as that. Okay, compression. Okay, so when you're taking a picture, if it's through a DSLR or if it's from your iPhone or your Samsung, then usually these devices put extra information into the image that you can't see. It's kind of called EXIF data. So for SLR cameras, they're storing things like the aperture, the stop value, all that sort of stuff in there, just in case you might want to extract it. And the same with these devices. They'll probably tell you that it's on an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy, the version of the Galaxy, all that sort of stuff. That information is within the image. It doesn't need to be, because unless you're a photographic website, you're not displaying that information, you don't need it in there, and it all takes up space. So there's a couple of things you can do. There's a couple of tools that I found. There's one for PC, there's one for Mac, and they basically compress files down, squeeze them down, and get rid of all the useless meta information that you don't need for those. So a couple of ones there, one for PC, one for Mac for those.
Would other compression tools do the same, scoop out the information, or just think?
Yeah.
Any
Anything.
of them
Those are
as
just
well.
2 examples if you're kind of stuck for what it is. And not only do they get rid of all that extra information, most of these files you can actually set what is a compression ratio as well. So for example, JPEGs, I'll cover it in a second, and you can squash it down to a particular size as well. But it removes all the extra information you don't actually need.
Is there a way to do this retrospectively to a blog site that's got lots of images that maybe haven't been compressed or uploaded in a large file size?
Yeah, so I recommend you don't rely on a plugin that does it on the WordPress website. Okay, that first of all. So there's lots of plugins you can get that's called Smushies files down. But can you imagine what's happening? You're uploading your 5,000 by 5,000 high resolution iPhone photo to your WordPress website. And then you've got a plugin that's now using your server resources to compress all that sort of stuff. Meanwhile, if you're selling stuff, then you've got somebody that's come in and actually wants to buy your high-ticket item, and it's taking an extra 10 seconds to load in, they're out of there. So I recommend you do all this locally, okay? When you're getting your images ready for your blog, do it all locally on your local PC, your local Mac, and then upload it. Don't let WordPress do all that stuff.
There's no benefit to optimizing them first and uploading them, but still running smart.
No, just double the effort.
So if you already have 100 blogs that you've maybe uploaded images
Yeah.
correctly, do you have to go back and delete all those images and re-input?
You don't have to, but if you're looking for the speed optimization,
That's the
then
only way to do it.
a good idea. Yeah. Generally what you do, and again, there's plugins out there where you can buy credits and it'll do it all in the back end within WordPress. So it will compress all your stuff in WordPress library. You can do that, but again, it's sucking up server resources for that. So what you can do is you can go to your web host. You go to your web host, you do it in your WP contents folder, download a folder onto your local, run one of these to a folder, compress it all, and then just upload them back to your web host. They might have to use FTP or File Manager, but that's certainly a way that you can do that. You know, you might want to not do them all. You might want to just set an hour aside of every week and just like grab a folder down, compress it, send it back up. Because it's a bit time, a bit boring as well.
Just on the server, instead of that money.
Well, again, you're using server resources, so we're trying to avoid doing that. Okay, so file types. About file types. So there's generally 3 types of file types. I'm not going to talk about SVG. We'll put that to one side. We'll talk about it later. Generally 3 types of web file types, image file types that are on the web. We've got PNG, or P, some people call it. This is what's called a lossless format, which basically means from 1 pixel that you're seeing, that's represented as 1 byte in the file, or roughly. So you're not getting any compression, you're getting like full resolution from that, which means and PNG also supports transparent backgrounds as well. So if you're looking to have, the use case for this is if you've got like a big diagram that you want somebody to look at, you've got like little writing on it in the diagram, you want it nice and clear and eligible, PNG is a good for that, because it's going to be super clear, because it's lossless, it's like 1-for-1 ratio for that. And if you need transparent backgrounds, you don't want to use GIFs because they're rubbish, they're big, so you can use PNG for transparent stuff as well. So that's your kind of use case, big diagrams with kind of small stuff, small writing, you want to be super clear and legible, you'd probably use a PNG for that. But the file sizes are larger. JPEG, which is the most common image type on the internet just now, it supports compression. Up to a 10-to-1 compression it can squeeze down. But what you'll tend to find with JPEG is, the more you compress it, the smaller the size, but at some point you're going to get pixelization for that. Now, in current software like Photoshop and other things, you've kind of got a level gauge when you're saving a JPEG file. It will come up. Not sure you want to save it full, maximum resolution, or maybe like large, medium, all that. And you can kind of gauge it. Round about medium or high, for me, is visually okay for that. But how you have to play around with it with yourself. You'll see that at some certain level you go down, it'll start to pixelate the image. But you can usually get away with like high or medium for most images. You can't really see any difference. And it's a significant file size saving as well. So kind of play around with those settings for JPEG. WebP is kind of a new player. I'm saying new, it's 12 years old, but web technologies take some time to take hold. But WebP, again, it's a lossless. It can be a lossless like PNG, so you can have like full original. It's like 1-by-1 comparison, so ultra fine detail you can really see. But it also supports compression like JPEG. So it gives you that option to be lossless, full size, or to compress it. And the compression you get is 34%, round about 30% smaller than JPEG. So you get the same thing with JPEG, but for 34% less. So I use WebP on everything, except for my featured images, because I post a lot on LinkedIn. And Facebook is okay, Instagram is okay, Twitter is okay with WebP. If you try to put WebP, post a link on your post to LinkedIn, it doesn't like the WebP, so it comes up with blank, or it finds something else that's completely irrelevant. So if you're posting on LinkedIn, you probably want to keep your featured images JPEG. In fact, I keep all my featured images JPEG. And then the rest of the posts I have WebP on there.
Can I ask you what you used to do the WebP?
Yes. This. A question at the back?
Yeah, I apply a load of WebP onto WordPress and it's not allowing me to do it, and I'm actually having to convert back to JPEG. Do you know any reason why it's coming up with an error?
Probably a conflict error. It's something else you've got installed. WebP is now native in WordPress, and it has been for the past 2 or 3 versions. So if you're running a current version of WordPress, then it should support, you should be able to drag and drop a WebP up there. In the library, it should be fine. If it isn't, do exactly the same thing as I recommend. Disable all your plugins, drag it across, and it doesn't work with something more serious underneath, and then you want to raise the support ticket with your web host. But and if it does work, then you have to kind of enable plugins to find out which one is screwing around. But yeah, it should definitely work because it's native. Yeah, so XN Convert is the best thing for WebP. So if you've got JPEGs, maybe your software doesn't natively spit out WebP for that, then you can create your JPEGs and then just run this through as a batch conversion. And this runs on PC, Mac, and Linux as well. So I do this, I create some of my stuff, I download from stock images, and I've got all my photos, I just run that through, can create WebPs, and that's what I use to upload. So it's really, really fast as well. And you can automatically set compression, so I set mine about, I think it's up to 12, and it's the highest, I set mine down to about 8 or 9. So you get a little bit of compression for those. Okay, talk about other media as well. You want to try and offload as much of this stuff as you can and not have it in WordPress. I do see sites with people have uploaded MP3s and MP4s and are playing them on the website, which is really a bad idea because they're huge data. So try and offload this stuff to other services. So for example, video, you want to try and offload to Vimeo, you want to try and offload to Adilio. You can use YouTube, that's fine, but just remember YouTube kind of comes with adverts and stuff that you really can't control so much. Whereas the premium video and Adilio, which is by a company called Big Command, you just place that wherever it is, whatever you upload, like no adverts and stuff. So try and get your videos off to another service. For your audio, for your podcasts or audio clips, SoundCloud is a good option for those that got a free account. If not, then you probably earn more towards like a podcasting services, something like Libsyn, if you're looking to do podcasts. But generally, you want to try and get your audio out there as well. You can use things like Amazon S3 for video, for audio, and just serve it directly. It's a little bit more work, a little bit more clicking around and making sure that people can actually see it, but it is an option. But I put that down for other stuff. So if you're selling like ebooks, PDFs, you've got maybe graphic files or other sort of types of files there, try and get them off of WordPress and put them on like another system like Amazon or Backblaze B2 for those. They're paid services, but you're getting all that data away from WordPress.
So if you want to have a video running on your website, for argument's sake, you open a Vimeo account and you load your videos there. And then for that video, it gives you a link or something that you embed in your website, and when somebody clicks on it, it just feeds through to Vimeo, loads it, plays it.
Yeah.
So you're not hosting, as you say, you're not hosting on your actual website.
That's right. So if you've got 100 meg video and you've embedded it in your WordPress website, that's 100 megs of data that's being downloaded. Bandwidth that you're probably capped if you're on a GoDaddy or SiteGround website. But then if you get 5 people looking at that one page, then that's 5 concurrents, lots of 100 megabytes is being downloaded. That's a recipe for crashing. So
also in contrast, these services have different hosting.
Yeah.
So they serve video in specific ways. So it's not like loading directly from, so they serve in pieces.
Little chunks.
Yeah,
little chunks. But your WordPress website only has like 1 or 2 commands to get the information, and then your web browser takes over and pulls it down from these services.
Last recommendation from Google for video is to use facade embedding.
Okay.
So it does mean with a lot of plugins for it. So you only embed featured picture from Vimeo or YouTube or something, and when you have interaction with the user, like on the picture, we just also adding button, like video button.
Yeah.
So when user wants to click video, the clicking and the player actually turns up.
Yeah.
What it does, like you're not loading any code from Vimeo and YouTube, except for featured image during the page load. So it speeds up the page load.
Yeah, you should always have a
So
thumbnail.
Google recommendation now is like to use, let's say,
Yeah.
kind of something. Which,
And if you're using Beaver or Element or if you like a page builder, most of those widgets have an option to choose a thumbnail, and they'll display the image first and then wait until they click on it and it starts the interaction.
Can I ask something? I normally do that, but I had an issue last time because I placed basically a video in the homepage that goes like in the background, like it's kind of like behind a headline,
Mhm.
and I had to place it in the library.
Okay.
Is there another way to do it? Because it's a different way. It's a different thing. It's not a video that the user actually clicks. You know what I mean?
It's a background video.
Exactly, it's a
Yeah.
background.
If it depends on what plugin you're using to do that, most will just look for a URL. Okay, and all these services like Vimeo, Adilio, Amazon, and Blacklight, once you've uploaded it, then there's just a URL to that, and that's what you use.
Oh, I can still use Vimeo even in this case. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's just the URL it needs to the file.
Okay.
You should be able to use those. Okay, again, with the same thing with email. So natively, WordPress uses PHP, which is the language that WordPress is built on. It's got a mailing function that the service uses that emails out. Now you can't upload every email, but you can probably try your best to upload a lot. If you're looking to do newsletters or lots of emails out to people, don't use WordPress for that. It's a recipe for disaster. It might work for a first few months, maybe a year, but if you're building up subscribers, you're sending out more newsletters, and then suddenly your WordPress website is an email service. Okay, so offload all that stuff onto a service. Okay, you can use things like SendGrid and Mailgun, which sends emails to their system for mass emails for those. And if you're looking to send things like newsletters, then use like an appropriate service like Content Relationship Manager or an email marketing system like ActiveCampaign, MailChimp, Aweber, Drip, all that sort of stuff. Use those services and not WordPress to send out newsletters. Now, I know that WordPress sends out a lot of notifications, especially if you've got membership plugins and if you've got a e-commerce website, it's always sending out notifications. Probably the best thing you can do is to install WP Mail SMTP, and that gives you the option to route all WordPress emails either through your Gmail address. For that, if you don't want to pay for any of these services, you've got like a Google Mail, you can use that. Or it has the option to send it through SendGrid and Mailgun. And what that means, if you've got like a WooCommerce store and it's sending out email notifications to your customers, purchase requests, here's your download, here's your receipt links for those, all that stuff is not going through your WordPress server anymore. It's now going through these proper services. Because I hear time and time again that people in forums say, oh, I've got a customer that's running Microsoft Office, Mail, Microsoft Outlook, and they're not getting these emails. Or, I get these emails to my address, but I know my customer's not getting them. And that's because the WordPress web server is not really set up to be a mail server. Now, there's things you can tweak about it, but again, that's lots of time, lots of technical stuff for you to do. The best thing you can do is install this plugin and route it through a Gmail or whatever other account you've got. And then that's a proper email delivery service. It's offloaded from WordPress, it's formatted correctly. 99% of the time, your customers are going to get all your emails. Okay, so we talked about Cloudflare, which is a caching system, a CDN caching system, but you can install local caching plugins as well, which is going to help WordPress. So there's 3 of them. There's WP Rocket. That's probably the best, but it is a paid, it's a premium version. And then there's WP Total Cache and WP Super Cache, which kind of work roughly the same sort of thing. And what these are doing, they're doing the same thing as Cloudflare is doing, but just on a local level. So whereas Cloudflare is caching your website into flat files and storing it on their servers, these plugins here are looking at what people are looking on your WordPress website and storing those as flat HTMLs within your WordPress website. So if someone comes to your about page, WordPress does all its work, it creates that, these plugins step in and save it as a file. So then when the next person comes in, it's the same page, they're just delivering that flat file out. And they're always kind of looking for changes as well. So if you update your about page, it'll recompile it and then serve that for those. So it's always good, you can get a little bit of increase if you're using your local cache plugins, and even on top of things like Cloudflare as well. And I love that graphic, that was just Weird and creepy at the same time. Okay, the next thing you can do is to squish things down. Okay, so what we're talking about here is CSS and JavaScript files. I'm going to talk a little bit quicker because we're running out of time. If you've got lots of plugins, you've got your theme, you'll know that it starts adding more JavaScript files, more CSS files. That's more files your web server's going to download all the time. One thing we can do is to make those files smaller. Now, we can combine them, and that's another set of plugins, but sometimes when you combine things together, it kind of can generate some errors, because especially with cascading style sheets, the clues in the name, it's a cascading style sheet. If you squish things together, you can get that order out of whack. And sometimes, things to expect in a JavaScript command to be up here, and if you're executing down here, then it doesn't see that command, it can throw up errors. So I don't recommend combining stuff, but I do recommend squeezing it down. So when you look at a CSS file, when you look at a JavaScript file, they're written in a way where you can actually see, because it's written by humans. What these plugins like Autoptimize does is it removes all the white space, all the space characters. So when you look at a minimized version of those, it's all just like one big line of stuff which you can't read, but machines love it because it's squished down an awful lot.
Cloudflare actually does this for you on the free version too. If you use Cloudflare, it has a JavaScript and CSS minification option. So if you want to improve again the speed of what it can send that request to the end user through their routing, it has an optimization service. You can literally just toggle it and it'll work really, really well.
Excellent, great tips. I'm gonna actually look to that. Cool. So you can use Cloudflare as well. But this is a great little thing. I know you don't pronounce it. It does that. It reduces stuff. It does a lot more as well. So you can look at the features there. So it's kind of a bit of an overlap between those other things that I've talked about tonight. But it's a great little plugin, and I love that B movie. That's Monster Ants, I think. Right, we're getting there. Quick, pingbacks and trapbacks. So this is back to when WordPress was a blogging system. It would contact other people who have blogged and other people who had mentioned you, and WordPress would exchange all that sort of stuff together. Nobody does that anymore. Just switch it off. So in discussions, uncheck that off. We don't like that stuff anymore. No need for it. Okay, WordPress themes and features. Now, themes have kind of grown to be big themey monsters over the past 2 years. This is why I asked you to do those kind of 3 baseline tests. Do the WordPress core and then add your theme, so you can see what speed difference the theme makes. But themes come with a whole heap of stuff. So you really do need to pay attention to your theme, if you really need to optimize your website. But here are 3 of the kind of the top leading leanest themes. So if you're looking to start a new website and you don't know where to start, these are probably the good 3 to start off with. GeneratePress, it's probably the leanest. It actually uses the Gutenberg editor, so it's not a page builder. You've only got a few things. It allows you to do columns and rows and stuff. I built my willbrown.com website on GeneratePress, so it's not a theme builder. And that's why I can get those really high numbers, because it's not loading all this page builder stuff. Ocean WP is kind of similar. It's got a few extra tweaks in there. And then Astra. Astra's I grudgingly put it in lightweight, but it's lightweight for what it does, because it's got a lot of features in there, but they actively make it as lightweight as they can. And it's got a good tool set. It's got extra things that GeneratePress and Ocean WP don't have. But a lot of people like it because it's got all those features in there. So if you don't know where to get started, those are probably a good 3 to have a look at. A note on page builders. These are the 4 popular page builders at the moment: Elementor, Beaver Builder, Oxygen, and Divi. Divi being the older one, Elementor being probably the most popular one out there at the moment. You're not going to get 99% on your gradings if you're running a page builder, okay? Because it's kind of a cost analysis benefit ratio, okay? Because you're basically you're suffering, you're loading in more stuff to be able to do easier editing. Okay, so a page builder is basically drag and drop. It's all these widgets, all these features. It makes it super easy to create any sort of page, but the payback is that you're loading all this stuff just in case you might want to use it. So if it's got 100 widgets, 100 features, it's going to have to support 100 features with lots of different files. So if you're using a page builder, it's great for marketing, it's great for building stuff fast, but if you're looking for a super optimized, fast website, you're not going to get it using a page builder. You can get close, and you can optimize it as best you can, but you're not going to get like A's across the board. Okay, so it's something you have to live with, basically, if you're choosing a page builder. Now, I am an Elementor ambassador. So I run the Elementor website group, the Elementor Sydney website group, and I've access to their Slack channel, and I chat to developers on like a daily basis. I know that they've got a team of people who are actively looking at making it go faster. So taking things out, taking out all the construction, making it as lean as possible, optimizing everything. They got hit really hard when Google announced their core web vitals. So there's a few articles that were posted about Elementor. This is the death of Elementor because it's so slow, because it's such a big thing. And they kind of went, yikes. So they put people onto full-time, making it as fast as they can. Now, I don't know if Beaver Builder, Option, or Divi do the same, but I know that definitely Elementor's got like a specific team just looking to make it go faster. But again, it's a page builder, it's got lots of stuff in it, so it can only go as fast as it can go. You're never going to get lightning fast like you would something like GeneratePress. Okay, we're getting there, almost at the end. Review your plugins. So have a look at all the plugins that you've got loaded in. Make sure you still need them. There's a lot of people loading plugins for just one or two things, and they might forget about them. Have a look at those. Trash the ones that you don't need, that you're not using. But have a look at the big plugins. And I'm talking about big things like Jetpack. You know, if you're using Jetpack, if you're just using Jetpack for lazy loading or infinite scrolling, then it's got all this other stuff in there that it could be loading in. I know it's got a lot better, you know, in the past few years about not loading everything all at the same time. But it's not just Jetpack I'm talking about. It's any kind of plugin that's doing lots of different things. If you're only using 2% of that, then look for something else that just does that one thing, and see if you can replace those big plugins. Because you're going to find that you're not loading in all those assets. It's going to make it go really, really quickly. Someone asking a question.
Is there a good way to find out if the plugin is actually being used? You know, if you look at your list of plugins, you go, well, I mean, maybe a developer or somebody put it on at some point, and you come back to 6 months later, you go, I don't know what that does, and is it being used? But so you're trying to turn it off or delete it if you're not sure. Is there a way you can find out? Or
not easily. Not easily.
Just like deactivate it and then see what happens.
Yeah, switch off and wait for screening.
You can do that.
What
You can
do
do that. There is a way, but it's a more advanced way. I'll show you at the end. But there's not an easy way to find it, unfortunately. Yeah. Because a lot of these things, WordPress is an events-based program, which means it fires things based on something that happens. So you could have 1,000 pages that don't use one plugin, you know, and then you've got that one page, and when it reads that thing, it fires it and it picks up the plugin, and if it's not there, it goes there. Yes. Okay. But yeah, definitely have a review of your plugins. Make sure you're using the ones. If you're not, trash them. Actually, delete them. Don't just leave them on there. If you need more data, so if you've done all this stuff and your website's still slow, this one page is still slow and you don't know why, the best thing you can do, and this is getting more into the advanced topic, is you can run something called Query Monitor. Now, it's a plugin, and what it does is it puts something in the WordPress admin bar. So it's got all these things down here. So it took 1.82 seconds to load in. That's the size of the page that it's delivering. So you get 28 kilobytes. I can't remember what the other one is for, but you've got 19 queries, the number of queries. That's the number of times it hits the database for those. This can be a good way of figuring out what's going on in that one page. It just won't optimize for speed. What you might find is that, you know, you might have like 100 queries, which means it's querying the database 100 times. You think, oh, what's it doing? Have a look through that. It should tell you roughly what it's doing, what plugins it's using, you know, the number of queries. You can see, obviously here, WooCommerce, you know, it's doing 28 queries. It's querying the database 28 times for this particular example here, which is a lot. But you may need WooCommerce. But you might find it's a plugin that sticks out that's got like 100 queries. Like, what's it doing? You know, and that's your chance to, you know, review that plugin, have a look. You know, can you bin it? Can you get something else that's newer? Is it out of date? That sort of stuff. So this might give you a little bit of a clue as to what's going on under the hood without having to bring in a developer, basically, to see what's going on. So Query Monitor, quite good. Just remember to switch off, because Query Monitor itself actually slows down your website because it's looking at what WordPress is doing. So by looking at each transaction, it's actively slowing it down. So only use it if you're troubleshooting and then delete it afterwards. Okay, this is getting towards the more really advanced stuff. So this kind of straddles between your web host provider and yourself. So if you're running a VPS, that's a virtual private server, then you're managing that server. You can install this because it's server code. If you're not running a VPS, if you're just on a hosted solution, then you might want to have a conversation with your web host to see if we can install this. It might not be free either. Okay, so New Relic is a server monitoring tool. So it sits on the server and it looks at what's happening between all the different stacks, all the different layers of the web server, PHP, the database engine, and there's also a WordPress module as well that actually looks at WordPress itself. If you really don't know, if you can't get what's happening and you want to get your WordPress website fixed, if it's still slow, this is the best thing to do because it gives you the data that you need. It breaks everything down. This is just one example. You can see here, this is the WordPress plugin. So it's in the top 5 plugins and themes by response time, and it's telling you there. So whatever that is at the top, I don't know where it is, ad injector. This looks like it's something to do with adverts, placing in. Then you've got BuddyPress, Boombox, WordPress SEO, and then BBPress and other stuff. So it lists them all by that's just one view, by the most consumption plugins and themes. And you can do this, you can get a real good overview as to what's happening. So you can probably see, you'll probably get a spike. You know, if your website is still loading slow, you'll see a spike in something. It might be database, it might be plugin, it might be a particular query that something's happening. But if you're really, really stuck, you've went through all the stuff, it's still slow, talk to your web provider about running New Relic maybe for a couple of weeks, just so you can identify. And that will give you like the server information. It scoops up all the data, and you should be able to fix 99% of everything from that data there. So that's probably the last tool that you'd want to hit, but it's an option. But wait, there's more. Okay. I know, I love that cheesy stuff. So this is the last thing, I promise, the last slide. So if you're looking for the ultimate speed in WordPress, then you really need to go headless and static. Okay. We've talked a little bit about static before. Static is your HTML files, and that's what Cloudflare does. It's what your cache files are. And then headless is this concept of splitting WordPress away from the front end. So what we have in this scenario, we have WordPress running on a different machine, a different IP address, a different address you log in. It's secured. Sometimes it's even locked to your IP address, so only you can use it. But the whole idea is that only you are logging into WordPress, and you can edit stuff, you can manage all this stuff. But then what happens is you have a hosting service like Static, and there's lots of other ones that are just starting to come out. Static is actually acquired by Elementor, so they're working quite closely together just now. But what this does is once you've made your changes on WordPress, the software here looks at the changes and it compiles that static HTML, your CSS and JavaScript files. It puts on a separate server. This is what we call headless. But WordPress over here in one server, and then with the public facing site, which is the compiled HTML on the other server. And that's the one that your visitors are looking at all the time. And all that's being served there is HTML files, CSS, and JavaScript. That's all. Now, there's a little bit of trickery when you start to look at things like WooCommerce, e-commerce sites, membership sites. You've got that dynamic element, and they have certain solutions. They've got certain exclusions. So you'll have to read through all the terms and conditions and see exactly what they do. But if you're looking for the ultimate speed, this is probably the way you want to go. If you're looking for that 99% across the board, green ticks, Google document, and that's going to be the fastest way you can do it. And that's compiling all your pages as the static files, and web servers love static files. You just go up, there you go. So there's no processing at all, just pass it straight to the browser. So if you've not heard about that before, maybe it's something you might want to have a look at. It's an emerging technology, I think, so it's not 100% yet. There's going to be lots of caveats, but it's something to consider if speed is like the most important thing for you guys. Now, I've shoved a lot of information in your faces in an hour and a half. Sorry about that. My presentation takes on for a little bit. But hopefully there's heaps of stuff there that you can take away. If not all of it, maybe like a few key things. CDN, you might want to do. Premium DNS to reduce that time to first byte. And look at your images for those, and maybe offload some videos. If you do those things, at the very least, you're going to see a huge increase in your speed for your website. Any other questions?
Yeah, can I speed up my WordPress website with a quantum computer?
Yes, yes. In fact, Australia just this week built a quantum computer on a chip. So the very first people to actually, not mass engineer, but engineer a quantum computer on a chip. So we're getting there, but 2 years ahead of schedule. But we're a bit late.
Bitcoin as well. Right.
Oh, yeah, well, quantum computer, Bitcoin, the price of that. Even further.
Yeah, is there an idiot's guide to translating GT metrics? Because, I mean, if I run mine through, I get through it, I can understand it, then I just like forget completely lost. So I've got, my first one is avoid long main threaded tasks. And at that point, I just go too hard and give up.
Yeah.
So
the
at
good thing
what
about
point, then how do I then find out more?
the good thing about GT metrics is maybe not on the mobile, but certainly on the desktop, it actually tells you exactly what it means if you.
It's still in too much deep for me.
Yeah.
I need idiot.
WP Beginner, TalkMag, and WP Tavern, they're the big three kind of newsy kind of sites for like WordPress. Like I'm not too technical, but I like to know some things about how to make my site do stuff. They all have explainers on how to like de-nerd GT metrics. I thoroughly recommend WP Beginner to start with. It's actually not just beginner friendly, caveat the name. WP Tavern is the next big one. Also, Matt Mullenweg's thing is on there. It's kind of like how most people can have that. They're good places to start, kind of like de-nerd GT metrics information. Like, I don't care about DOM sizes. I just want to store. Okay, cool. Here's what that means and why it's important. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I've used them for other things, so I understand this. Cool.
Great. They do tend to geek out on stuff. These sites.
Maybe not great.
Yeah. But I think most of the stuff, it'll say, things like, image size too high or CSS file too large. Those are the kind of things you can usually.
I realize a lot of mine's ad based, so I can't really do a lot about it, but I'd like to understand it at least.
Yeah. Are you ads? Are you using WebP for your adverts?
I'm with Zoic, so I've got blogs, so I've got Zoic, but I'm running Leap, but
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of web items again. I was green, now I've gone to orange.
Yeah.
It's creeping to red, and I'm like, oh, for God's sake, I'm changing.
Yeah.
But so.
And bear in mind that these metrics change all the time. So just this month, Google have changed some of the core web vitals. So they're not static. So just because you optimize your web page today, doesn't mean it's tomorrow it's not back to yellow or something. So this is like a constant thing you've got to be looking at every quarter or something, or every half a year, just do like a speed audit.
Can I ask you why sometimes when you check on different tools, they give completely different? I mean, not completely, but every time they check Web Vital, it's always yellow, orange.
Yeah.
But there's I don't remember the name of the yellow one.
Pingdom.
That one it gives me a different result.
So the reason the different speed tools give you a different result is that nobody knows the exact Google algorithm. Nobody knows how they calculate the rating. So these companies have got their own best guess, and that's what it is. So the GT metrics, when I showed you initially, the gradings that they have, that's their system. So that's their best guess as to how they think Google is measuring speed text. That's why you're getting a little bit of variance. Pingdom will have their own grading system. GT metric has their own one. All these companies have their own kind of grading system. But they shouldn't be too far out of the line.
They moved to Lighthouse, all of them.
Yeah.
Except Pingdom, I guess. I stopped using Pingdom because it was like not good. And for, I don't know, like the last year, they stopped at all like the testing speed, website speed. They have a lot of errors in JavaScript, tunnel, and so on.
Yeah.
So but GT metrics and Google, like the Google tool, use Lighthouse. Lighthouse is an open API, so you can even write a code. You can code Bing and ask Lighthouse for speed. But there are many reasons for different results.
Yeah, and some of these tools might favor different recommendations of others. So some of them could be more biased on file sizes and file compression. Others might be more interested in time per spike and network connections. So it really is kind of their best guess.
How they translate the Lighthouse rules to the language of coding.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
the base thing, we'll mention this on the beginning. when you're logging for free account on GT Metrics, you have another server, Sydney or London. When you use Pingdom, you have no choice. So
Yeah.
when you measure from like, I don't know, like Canada, the results will be different, you know, because distance makes the result different.
Yeah.
Even like, I believe that if you measure like Sydney Perth, it will be different.
Yeah, it would be a few
Yeah,
milliseconds
probably.
different. And it all adds up. If you've got like a heavy
So-
website with resources, then it would do that.
For initial, it's better to use one tool, like, because you will be like overwhelmed with these
Yeah,
whole results.
yeah.
Focus on one.
Yeah.
Choose the closest server and measure and test. Change something on the website and test again. So it's-
Yeah, but don't,
And
don't
how
let it.
fast are they to get updates? So like if I change something, let's say that I change an entire images folder. Can I test straight away? No.
You
Because they're also
can,
the
you
cache.
can. If you're using like caching system, you want to turn that off.
Yeah.
So, or if you use like Cloudflare, you want to like,
Take off some
yeah, like turn it off or clear your cache when you're testing. Otherwise, it's going to pick up those fragments.
Yeah.
But it'll do it instantly because unless you've got caching, or unless your web host has got caching, it's basically hitting your WordPress website all the time. So it should pick up it. If it doesn't do it instantly, then give it a minute or so to do that. Yeah. Last
It
question.
will be not good to switch on the cache on the test.
Yeah.
Because you need to clear cache each time you run another test, because otherwise you will have
Same
the
thing.
result from cache. So it's pointless, you know. So in my opinion, the best is to first clean as much as you can on the back end, as Will said, all these steps important,
Yeah.
and then try to add on top of this cache or something, and it will absolutely speed up. Free cache or something. The caching, even on your host, is pretty good. So.
Will, which of those tools would you say is closest to the real world, not necessarily the Google ranking, but the real world experience of the user? Which is the most comprehensive in terms of?
I find GT Metrics is the best. It's not closer than that to my customers and my experience. So, I mean, it's what going to make sense to you. If you have Pingdom tools works better for you, but for me, GT Metrics, you know, the measurement that I'm getting back, then when I go to the browser, I can simply get, I can get that. It does map it out pretty good. Last question.
So I'm building a blog site using Elementor, Cloudflare, and my score is a D, 61% on GT Metrics. And it says the main thing is to reduce initial server response time. Is that, and it's 936 milliseconds. Is that because I'm using Bluehost?
Well, it could be.
It depends on the type of hosting you have at WordPress. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like shared hosting.
Yeah, I can't remember what I paid.
So if you pay $10 each, 9 times out of 10 probably on a shared host.
Yeah.
Which means the way I describe it when I'm talking to like customers or my own clients, it's like I want to play drums in my apartment at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And $300 tenants won't like the fact that I'm playing drums in my apartment at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So I get a house. That house is with a dedicated server or wherever. I can play drums all I want.
Yeah, attached versus apply.
Exactly.
And so should I change the host? It would do enough because I'm using Cloudflare already, and I can look at my images, and I might have one image I think that's actually quite big. Am I better off just changing the package?
It depends. Like it comes down to what you can afford as well.
Yeah.
But like I always like my rule of thumb is pay for. Like, I work with WP Engine, but I have a plan on SiteGround. I have a plan on Whitewell. Like I'm server agnostic for whomever my customers are for what they need. They find a host for what will give me the best result
Okay.
for what they need.
So do everything I can, and then pay for as much as I can afford,
Realistically, yes. At that point, what do you want?
and what the return is and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
exactly.
But do that first baseline test.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that too.
WordPress, basic theme, and that'll show you the difference. And if it's still really long, and there's nothing you can do about it,
Yeah.
then yeah, it's your.
I think also that test that you're doing, if you're on a shared host, I'd be redoing that every 3 months because you can get,
Yeah.
you know,
The-
that can slow down with other people playing drums.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
You metaphor it.
Yeah, 300, 500 servers playing drums on sites on
Yeah.
one server.
Black Friday's a big one. Like,
And all it takes is one guy to be like spamming email.
Yeah.
You know, a dodgy site send out email and that's it consuming all the servers.
that
That's-
willbrand.com site, so that's my site.
It is. It's just all the time.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
thank you, guys. You are here next, if I can. Yes, so next month, back in here or on the rooms,
Oh, wow.
talk about switching over to Google Analytics 4. If you don't know, if you're running Google Analytics, and next year Google's going to scrap the current Universal Analytics, you're going to have to use this one anyway. So I'll give a bit of overview of how you can switch over to the new version. You might as well do it now.
This isn't bounce rate anymore.
Yeah?
This isn't bounce rate anymore.
Oh, really?
It's horrible. I can't handle it.
It's different. I just focus on conversions, I don't look at conversions. Okay, so I'll let you guys go home. Thank you very much. I'll see you here
Thank
next time.
you.
Thank you.